Hello and welcome to the show. Now, the topic for today is a simple one. How does the UK make the most of the electric vehicle revolution, and how do we get more of you, our fantastic audience, and the wider UK public driving electric? Well, I'm delighted to be joined today by Quentin Willson, who's here to explain more about the work he's doing with the FairCharge campaign to make the choice of going electric a choice available to all. So welcome, Quentin. It's really good to see you, as always. Can you explain what the FairCharge campaign is?
Okay, for about 12 years, I was a co-founder of a campaign called Fair Fuel. So we saved the UK about 130 billion in fuel duty. But that is yesterday's technology, diesel, petrol. And all the time I was promoting that, I was driving electric cars like you.
Yeah.
And I got to the stage where I thought, okay, we can now do up to 300 miles on one charge in electric cars. It was time to change from supporting fossil fuels to supporting a different technology. That was yesterday's battle. Today's battle is clean, affordable, sustainable energy without pollution. So that's why I founded FairCharge. And it's a national campaign to harness the opportunities that electrification has for the UK and the world, and to make ministers and politicians and parliamentarians aware of how important it is, to make consumers aware. So this educative policy as well, to get rid of all the myths and uncertainties, and to make it accessible. So it's electrification, EVs for the many, not the few, because at the moment it's people like you and me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're middle class, early adopters, and we've done all the fighting, and we put up with all the charming idiosyncrasies that these electric cars used to have then, where there were no charging facilities. But now if we want mass electrification, we need to make it easy for people. You know, fair pricing, fair experience. It's a campaign to just make sure that everybody has access to electric cars. And one of the main things at the moment is we allow low-income drivers access to electric cars. Now, they've done this in America with used EVs. Now, we need to do it here, and they've done it in Scotland. You know, you can have an interest-free loan or a low interest for a loan. And with EVs going up in price, it means that they're not a wasting asset. They can be an appreciating asset. So you could get an infrastructure bank to underwrite the cost of a used EV so more people could have access. Because we know that people who live in areas where there's bad air pollution, they're the ones who suffer most. So we need to change that. And if we can get them all into EVs, or lots of them, then their air quality improves in the regions that they're living in. So all these things are really part of the campaign.
So I understand, though, which is really good news, you've got some sponsorship, some support from companies.
We have. We're really lucky. We've got the sponsorship from the RAC, which is great breakdown organisation, and they've got lots of backroom data about electric cars and breakdowns and charging and battery life and stuff like that, which we use. And we've also got Octopus as well. Now, we're really honoured to have Octopus as a sponsor because, as far as I'm concerned, they're one of the best energy companies in the UK, if not the world. And again, that data that they make available to us is really wonderful. So these two sponsors are critical to us, not just because it gives us some kind of financial headway, but it also gives us data that we can use and interrogate to make sure the stuff we're telling people is absolutely 150% accurate in a world of misinformation and fake news. And that's really important, and something that the campaign is absolutely proud to have.
And then, so what got you into starting FairCharge in the first place then?
All that kind of stuff that we love, the noise of combustion engines and the smell and the smoke and all that fuss and grinding, it just disappears when you think this is the future.
Yeah.
The technology's here. It's now. You can buy it. You won't lose money. You can even run it on your business.
So I can see, Quentin, this is a genuine passion of yours. So why do you feel it is so important?
Well, I mean, it's not just important. It's absolutely critical that we get politicians to understand the enormity of the choices they've got to make in the next 2, 3, 4 years. And we need energy security in this country. We've relied on North Sea gas and North Sea oil for far too long, cheap electricity. And we are in the mess we are in because we've allowed Russian gas to dominate and fuel from countries where they just, they have cartels. And we just can't do that. And we need to understand that energy, be it gas, be it diesel or petrol or electricity, without it we are nothing. It is the new financial imperative, and we've successive governments, and I'm not blaming the current one, have just completely not read the signals. So here we are, and we've got persistent energy inflation that's not going to go away for another 2 to 5 years. So we really do need to understand that the change, the energy transition starts with electric cars. Because if you get electric cars right and you invest in the battery technology, and you've seen the increase in battery life, mileage, density, charging times, if we could do that and then do it to static energy storage, in these great big batteries that Musk uses in Australia and California, then we can power just towns, cities, businesses, and we can store the renewables that everybody said is too intermittent, and then it begins to change the whole energy mix. And we need to do hydro, we need to do tidal, we need to do onshore, offshore wind, and be able to have an energy mix that's pretty resilient and not rely on imported energy, which is just killing our economy. I mean, this at the moment, and we're recording this at the end of August. There are people who are saying this is worse than COVID in terms of the financial implications that this is going to have. I mean, we're going to see businesses that will just not be able to trade because they have no profit margin, because their electricity and gas bills have gone up 500, 1,000%.
It's crazy, yeah.
You know, so if people like you and me don't put the flag up the mast and say, hang on a minute, Minister.
Yeah.
You know, we've got to do something. All those businesses that pay 20% VAT, we have to help them now, not to mention all the struggling families. And that's before we talk about air quality. You know, in inner urban cities, fine particulate pollution from petrol and diesel is 50%. And we know it's all linked to dementia and heart disease now. There's a robust research trail of papers that says that the use of diesel is damaging us as a society. Then you need to think about jobs. You know, if we can get this battery industry right, and we have clean, high-paid, new jobs that allow people to kind of work, not dismantling combustion engines, not filling them up with oil and all this sort of stuff, and we can have this transition to clean, renewable, sustainable, non-polluting, non-dirty, non-smoky energy. What is not to love? So it becomes, Robert, just an evangelical mission that if you and I don't do it, then what's going to happen? And again, part of what FairCharge wants to do is to control electricity prices. Now, when we started this, little did we know that they'd be rampant like now. So this is a moment in history where we really do have to take notice of the opportunities out there. They're much, much greater than the old order. Why there is so much negativity and so much resistance? Well, I guess I'm an idealist because there's resistance because it's disruptive what we're doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's so many vested interests that don't want this to happen. But I do want it to happen for my kids and their kids and the generation after that.
But then when we first got electric cars over 10 years ago, there were a lot of barriers to driving an EV. You know, like you had to be slightly an idiot to do it because there was nowhere to charge except your house. What do you see as the barriers now? Because things have really changed.
It's important to say the infrastructure must be better if you're going to get mass adoption. So we need to have, and this is what FairCharge also wants to do, you know, a fair experience, fair pricing, a fair environment, so you actually enjoy the process of plugging in and going and having a cup of tea for 15, 20 minutes. I was talking to a big insurer the other day about range anxiety, and they do a breakdown cover. And they've got like 4,000 EVs on their books now. And the amount of breakdowns they get from people running out of electricity, Robert, is 0.5%. So
Right.
it's barely statistically even measurable. So in that car park of 3,000 to 4,000 cars, it's probably that, you know,
Right.
less than 5 breakdown because they've run out of juice. So that's not happening. And if it was, we would see it.
Oh,
the hard shoulders would be littered
Yes.
with these cars, and it would be all over the front page of the Daily Mail. So those barriers, and then all the myths that we talked about earlier, you know, this nonsense about that you can't recycle the batteries. Of course you can. They go on to second and third life.
Yeah.
and that, you know, it's mined in the DRC and children. And look, yes, cobalt is in batteries, but in smaller and smaller quantities. And Tesla have only half of their cars have cobalt in their batteries. But then it's been used in laptops and phones and refining petrol for years, and nobody's complained about that. So this misinformation is one of the barriers, and people listen to this stuff on the internet.
What are you and the FairCharge campaign calling for? I mean, what can the government do to help this?
Well, there's an awful lot, Robert, that the government needs to do. The first thing is this ridiculous disparity between charging at a public charger and charging at home. So if you charge at a public charger, you are charged 20% VAT.
Right.
Whereas if you charge at home, it's 5%. So obviously, the people who charge at home have access to lower tariffs late at night. I mean, on my car at home, it's 3.5p per kilowatt hour. So I get that, and that makes it a real difference. But so somebody who can only charge at a public charger, they can pay up to 55, 60, maybe even 70p plus VAT. So what we don't want is the stage where if you're public charging, it's as expensive as filling up with diesel. At FairCharge, we've worked it out that if you scrap that 20% VAT on public charging, the cost would be 18.4 million. Okay? Now
To the government.
To the government.
Right.
And
their loss in revenue.
Yeah, at current rates. Now, if you've got 80% electric car adoption, then it comes to about, maybe $500 million. But let me remind you that 5p cut recently on petrol and diesel, that cost the Exchequer 2.4 billion. So what I'm asking for
is way less.
It's a raindrop echoing in an ocean, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
And if we disadvantage people and say, you know, because 40% of the population don't have driveways, don't have charging, and have to use public chargers. So why are we disincentivizing them with a silly government policy? You know, and part of the problem, and you say, what can government do? Government can understand. I've got to convince them, and what I do is one by one we have meetings, either actually in Parliament or on Zoom, telling them all about this, telling them the stuff that you and I know and have been living and breathing and eating for years and years and years, and getting them to understand that when there are votes from the extreme right-wing Conservatives who want to unpick all this green stuff, all the green levies and everything, that they vote against this, because it's really important, because this is going to happen if we're not careful. So the government needs to do much more. It needs to understand the opportunities, the huge jobs, the huge industry, the huge exports, the huge reindustrialization of the UK. We've got to start making stuff, building stuff, having technology. You know, the science and technology stuff is so important now. And push this. And this is where the government now, particularly now, needs to understand we're looking down the barrel of this historic energy crisis. The way to get out of it is through technology. And that begins, forgive me for going back to this, it begins with these electric cars that you and I have been driving. Because in this country, we have this, and again, I'm sounding a bit kind of misty-eyed here, we have this tremendous technology. We lead the world in battery tech, but we just don't know it. And we're looking at a moment in history now, Robert, where if we lose this opportunity, then we will forever be remiss.
That is fantastic, Quentin. Thank you so much for explaining that. It's always really inspiring and uplifting to talk to you. I always look forward to it. But what can we say to our audience? What can they do? What action can they take to help this?
Okay, it's really important to engage with us as a campaign so we can then engage with Parliament, and you can too. Because, look, what I've learned over the years of campaigning is that if enough people raise their voices, then MPs, ministers, parliamentarians do take notice. So go on our website, which is faircharge.co.uk. We have a change.org petition. Go on that. And go on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And on Twitter, it's at FairCharge UK. And we've done on the website letters templates for you to write to your MP and fill out the details, because the more of those letters MPs get, the more they realise that they will have to engage with us as a campaign and with me as a campaigner. So I will have meetings with them, and I will take them out in electric cars if they haven't already been out in one, and then they will become converts. So your engagement is really important. And we're also doing something as well, which is little video diaries. Send us in anything about your ownership of an EV, even just a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, why it's good, how many miles you get to one charge, what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages. And these become little kind of pieces of evidence that we can show to ministers and the Treasury and even the Prime Minister, just to say, look, these are real life experiences of people out there. Listen to them.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I've got nothing else to say. Do what Quentin says. And as always, if you have been, thank you for watching.